16 years ago, the murder of a small-town businessman rocked the southeastern Missouri town of New Madrid. Good evening. I'm Angie Bailey.
And I'm Jim Rick. Thanks for joining us today. Townsfolk still wonder what went down the night of May 19th, 1994, when someone shot and killed Randy Martindale. KOMU8's Hillary Mullin examines how an old murder case is still a talking point today.
A jury convicted Richard Clay for Martindale's death back in 1995. Clay sat on death row at Bonne Terre prison until last month. Just hours before Clay was scheduled to die, Governor Jay Nixon halted his execution. In a prepared statement, Nixon said, quote, "Having looked at this matter in its entirety and after significant thought in council, I have concluded, however, to exercise my constitutional authority and commute Richard Clay's sentence to life without the possibility of parole. This is the first death row sentence Nixon has stopped since taking office. However, Nixon did say he still believes the evidence shows that Clay is guilty. In his first television interview since finding out he would live, I sat down with Richard Clay and talked about what life is like for him and his family, all of whom expected him to die."
He was a really good kid.
Joyce Cox is proud of her son. Their monthly family meals fill her schedule. Richard Clay's picture is posted all over his mother's Southeast Missouri home.
But this has so many memories of just me and him. And that's why it's...
But her son hasn't been home in over a decade.
I've been here since 1995.
For Richard Clay, home is here. A level 5 maximum security prison in Potosi, Missouri. Clay's roommates, 800 of the state's most dangerous and high-risk offenders. But for Clay, how he got here is still a question he asks every day.
I called my mom and dad, and I remember that's my dad, and I was like, "Dad," I said, "they're charging me with a murder." And he's like, "What?" And I said, "Yeah." And then I actually looked at the officer. I said, "Who'd you say I killed?" He said, "Randy Martindale." And I said, "Dad, they're trying to say that I killed Randy Martindale."
The Missouri Supreme Court and the 8th District Circuit Court have upheld Clay's conviction, but he maintains his innocence.
You know, I wasn't a great person on the street. I was involved in drugs and you know, so I wasn't no Boy Scout. I said, but no, I wasn't a murderer either.
And court documents show there is no physical evidence linking Clay to the crime scene. Prosecutors relied on witness testimonies and crime scene analysis to convict Clay in 1995. Police never found the murder weapon.
The prosecution's theory was that I hid in this house in a bedroom closet for an hour and a half. And I left no fingerprints, I left no hair. The fibers off the clothes, the fibers found, it didn't match me. The fingerprints didn't match me. The hair didn't match me.
Clay says he now spends his days focused on his faith in God, but he says sometimes the reality of his situation makes it hard to face the next day.
Days you don't want to get out of bed. I mean, some days you don't want to go do your prison job, you don't want to go to recreation. Sometimes you, I mean, for a few years when I first got to prison, you know, it's just like, is all this really worth it? Sometimes you say, let's just hurry and get this over with.
Clay's parents live 2 hours away in Commerce, a small town on the river near Cape Girardeau.
Our son was not a perfect man.
Despite his drug-filled past, the Coxes stand by their son's innocence, even when it hurts.
You cry a lot, you pray a lot, you argue, and you go back and all over every day. And it's just part of, oh, we get to keep him another day. Well, we get to see him again. And it just breaks your heart. There's no way to say it how it makes you feel unless you find it yourself. It's happened to you. And then you would understand that.
A heartbreak they say would fade if Clay could get a new trial.
I had to be realistic, and I do have a sentence of life without the possibility of parole. And I like to look forward to that, but if that doesn't happen, I'm going to still continue to make the best of what I have.
Clay's attorneys would have to present new evidence to convince the Missouri Supreme Court to rule that he deserves a new trial.